Welcome to the Starter Girlz Podcast, the show dedicated to the Starter Girl. She's an achiever, she's a creator, she's a magic maker, she's a dreamer, and she is doing all the things. I'm your host, Jennifer Loading, and welcome to this episode. All right, welcome to another episode of the Starter Girlz Podcast. I'm so excited about my guest today. She's amazing, and I love what she's doing. Clementine Moss, she is the founder and drummer of Zepparella, which I'm so excited about. She's amazing. Her book, From Bottom to Buddha and Back, The Slow Enlightenment of the Hard Rock Drummer, uses her music career as a metaphor for contemplative practice. And she's also a spiritual counselor. And am I correct? A non-denominational minister as well?
That's right.
You are awesome. So welcome to the show, Clementine. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Jennifer. This is going to be really fun.
I know. I'm excited. Well, and I'm excited. I told you off this video that I'm just excited because you're a drummer, and I think that's so cool.
Yeah.
So I guess what I want to do, I want to ask you about that first, because you have this amazing band, and I did go onto y'all's YouTube and I did look at some of your stuff, and you guys are amazing. Like, you're really good. It's like good stuff. I want to know how that got kind of formed, like, because you started this. So how did that come about for you?
Yeah. I've been a rock and roll drummer. I started playing drums when I was 27. So I've now played drums for 30 years. And drums were a complete surprise in my life. I didn't know I was going to be a musician. I thought I was going to be a writer. So I was in a band that toured very extensively for a while, a hard rock band. And then, when I was home, I thought, I'd like to, have a band when I'm not on tour to do. And so I joined an AC/DC band. And the guitarist of that, the Angus Young of that band, is Gretchen Menn, the guitarist in Zepparella now. And we wanted to play more often. And I told her that several years before, I'd had this idea for my original band to do a bunch of Led Zeppelin songs, mostly because I wanted to learn how to play Led Zeppelin's music. And she said, I want to do that too. And then the band was formed 18 years ago. And so now it's been a primary source of income for us for, a long time. I never really expected that I would be playing John Bonham's drum parts, since he's known as one of the best, if not the best, rock and roll drummer in the world who ever existed. Yeah. So it's a lot to bite off and a lifetime of learning, but I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you guys are good. Like I said, I've listened to watched some of the videos, and you guys are really good. So kudos to you on that. But I think it's so cool that you have had the opportunity to do that, because I think it's funny how in life, I always ask this question, like, and you already answered that. Like, did you think you would be doing something like that? And it's so interesting how I will say life is funny, how it just twists and turns, and we do things that I feel like they like accentuate, what's the word I'm looking for, our gifts and our strengths. Like they find us, right? Like these things find us and give us the opportunity to shine a light on the things that we're really good at. But sometimes we don't really know that that's the path we're going, right? We travel a different route, but it ends up being a different thing that we learn from it. You know what I mean? And we find it in a different way.
Yeah, totally.
If I'm saying that right.
No, I totally get that. And actually that kind of is why I ended up writing the book, because, drums were such a surprise in my life. And yet I see that drums kind of, brought me to now. They brought me everywhere I was supposed to be. And now that I'm a spiritual counselor and a shamanic counselor, the first time that I went to a shamanic journey workshop to learn how to do that, and I sat down and I saw the person at the front of the class with a drum in her hand, and I realized that a drum was going to be instrumental in my counseling practice. I just got blown away. Like, wow, drums really are. I feel like everybody gets to, everybody has their instrument, and people who say they're not musical, I feel that it's just because they haven't found their instrument. And drums definitely just kind of, like grabbed hold of me and, pulled me along with them. And now I found out in the past couple of years that I had a great uncle who was a big band drummer in the 30s up through the 60s, who had his own orchestra on the East Coast. And now my nephew, my 14-year-old nephew is playing drums. So I thought that it was just this fluky thing that happened in my life, but now I see, wow, maybe there's actually some kind of DNA in there too. So it's really neat to discover those things about ourselves and to be open to just kind of going where we're drawn. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it's funny because if I were going to play a band and or play an instrument in a band, I would want to do the drums. That's what I would want to do. Like, seriously, I think it would be so much fun. But I play piano, and I do agree with you that we all have to. Music is so good. I think music is so good for so many reasons, right? And I think if you can find something that you enjoy playing, I think that that's even better, And so I love that you've been able to find that, but also use it to help you in what you're doing now, and take it forward.
Yeah. Learning an instrument teaches you so much about yourself. There were things that I had forgotten about myself when I started playing drums, and a bunch of light bulbs went on. It's like, oh yeah, I remembered counting and tapping my feet when I was very anxious when I was a kid or trying to go to sleep, and how, when I was a little anxious, I would do kind of algebra in my head, and I thought, oh, wow, I am really mathematical, actually. These things that we learn. I think it's a shame that people believe a lot of people believe like, oh, I'm never going to be a professional musician, so there's no sense in me doing that. Our value so often is about, what it will, give back to us financially. But, at the end of the day, learning an instrument gives you so much beyond that it's definitely worth it. My 77-year-old mother, when she was 74, had her first piano recital. And I was just so inspired by the fact that she said, I played piano when I was a kid and I really wanted to really just get back to it. It made me happy to do it. And I just love that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so good that you said that too, because I think what we're tapping into is that word that I like to call flow. And I know other people use that word, but it's so true that we oftentimes think that we're either too old to do something, or there's no point in starting something, or like you said, there's going to be no monetary benefit to it. So we just don't try it. And, I always say, I kind of flip that and say, you really don't have an option. You should be, because when you understand the benefits of learning and doing those kinds of things that add value to your life, whether that be playing the drums, or I don't know what that looks like. It might be taking a martial arts class, or maybe learning a new healing, whatever that is. Like, I love to learn things. Like, I really enjoy the process of continuing to add knowledge, and so I think that when we get away from this idea, I like to use the word, exploring, because I think that we should continue as we age to continue to explore.
Yeah.
Keep looking at things and keep trying things and finding things that you love. And who says you're too old to decide you want to play the drums or you want to play the piano and go do a piano recital, right? Who says? I mean, if you don't have a physical limitation stopping
nobody's looking.
Exactly.
Nobody's looking. You get to go, you get to do. And I realized that I had a great benefit in my life, that I loved school so much. I loved to learn so much. And so, in my 20s, when I was really, would have bouts of depression or, anxiety, freaking out about life in general and who I was, whenever I would feel myself getting kind of mired in that, I would think, take a class. Just, it doesn't matter. Like, just look and see what's around you. What kind of class can you take to just learn something, and, I've done that throughout my life. I've taken sewing classes and, all of these different kinds of like kind of goofy classes, that maybe I knew that I wasn't probably going to, like, I would like to have time to sew, but it's very
Right.
low on my list. Right.
Yeah. Right.
But actually taking that class taught me how to see in a way. I realized when I took that class, wow, I've never paid any attention to clothing. I've never paid any attention to lines of clothing. And then I started to think, have I ever really looked at the lines of buildings and, the lines of horizon, like suddenly my vision changed because I was putting things together, and that's not a natural thing to me. So that's just an example of the kind of little things you can take with a $200 class or $150 class that you spend a couple weekends doing. I think it's a great benefit.
Yeah. And sometimes you don't really know what that's going to look like until after you do it, right? Like, and then you pick something up like that. I think anytime you can learn an instrument, or a language or something, I think it's beneficial, because even if you never are going to plan to use that, it just has the ability, I think, to open doors to other things. I think, like you just said, there's other things you pick up on, and sometimes you don't really recognize it in the moment. But if you go down later on, then you'll be like, oh, now now I know why I needed to do that. It's good stuff.
Right.
Good stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, and I think we kind of talked about this off camera, because, obviously this podcast is all about the female, achiever, creator, the magic maker. Funny that I tend to work with a lot of creators. It's so funny because us as creators, like, our brains are just always, looking at infinite possibilities and all the things that are going on out there. And sometimes we have to reel those ideas and those things back in, right? And make, actually do something here. But I think one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, because you did work, you're in this band and you've been working with females, which I told you my background. I came from Mary Kay, was in that company for a very long time. That was my demographic, the female entrepreneur, and we know that is sometimes a tough thing to do, right? Like, there can be a lot of competition and a lot of, defeating behaviors, and self-sabotage, because we're always running against each other. And I think when women come together collectively, they can do some amazing things. And so what I want to talk to you a little bit about is, how you guys have maybe managed to make that work to your advantage.
Yeah. I love this topic. And I feel like, I don't get asked about that very often. But the three really major musical projects that I've had in my life, and I've had others where I worked with wonderful, wonderful men. But the three really major ones have been bands of women. And for a long time, I thought, I don't really know why that is, right? Except for the fact that I felt that, the women that I work with tend to have the same kind of work ethic and the same ability to really dig into some of the difficult things, right? I've worked with Gretchen Mann, again, my guitarist, for almost 20 years, if you count the AC/DC band now. And I think we've had little tiny spats because we're tired and traveling and,
right.
But they are instant and over instantly, and it's pretty phenomenal to me to be in a creative partnership, in a business partnership, because, for the first several years of the business, we shared responsibility for that. And to not have had that kind of, those kind of arguments or that kind of resentment, and I've looked at that relationship quite a bit in my life, as it informs my other relationships and the things that I've learned from working creatively with people, because she's worked on my musical my solo projects. We wrote songs together for another project. So we've worked in a creative way, and that's very deeply emotional. And it's very connected to, our identities of, how we think things should go. And the fact that we've never fought about things is phenomenal to me. And so some of the reasons I think for that are, the first thing that we agreed when we went into it was that we wanted to let the other person know that their success was my success, like her success is my success. And if Gretchen becomes too busy and too successful to continue to work with me, that still elevates me, right? Mm-hmm. It's not, I don't have an ownership over her creativity. I'm not dependent on her. I have a deep respect for her own path. And what is good for her is good for me. And to recognize that the people around us who are doing well, it's not that I'm saying, oh, it's happening for her and not for me. I'm saying it's happening for her. And so lucky me, I get elevated by her success, right? I'm someone who got to be in cohort with this wonderful person. And the second thing that I think we agreed on at the very beginning was that because we have that basic understanding that we want the best for the other, that I want to let her know that I am completely open for her criticism of how I am not doing something, that's of benefit either for me, for her, or for both of us. I want to be able to hear that, even though it might be hard, because I know, and I can hear that, and I can be open to it, and hopefully not too defensive about it, because I know her goal is my success. Yeah. So, and when people come into the band, we really try to make that apparent. Like, I'm going to say difficult things, which you must say when you're working together, but know that at the base, I want your success. And now sometimes, in these projects, resentments begin to build. And that's a human thing. That's not a female thing. That's a human thing. Right. And no matter how, there are sometimes blocks happen that are just, they feel like they keep growing and we can't really make our way through them. No matter how many times we say, I'm going to tell you a difficult thing, and, but I do want your success. If there's a basic understanding that starts building where the other person won't hear that, or if I somehow have been have been short-sighted in my language or in my intention, or, it's like, it's a two-way thing. I'm not saying that I'm the most perfect person in the world. Certainly not. I wish that I had communicated things differently. And so that'll happen. But what I've learned over these 30 years is to just try to be as absolutely clear as possible when I see those problems start rising, those resentments start rising. Recently I did get a couple of calls from, people in the band who were not happy with something that I had said or written because of the way it reflected, especially, when I think about the book, I wrote that 6 or 7 years ago, right? So there's little subtle things that I think nobody else would notice that maybe some of my bandmates were bothered by. And gosh, what a gift it was to have them feel comfortable enough to call me and say, Clem, I can't get over this. This really bothers me. And for us to be able to have a conversation where I could take responsibility, first of all, where I could explain my intention, and then to take responsibility and to apologize for any hurt that I had, that I inflicted unknowingly, for them to feel that they understood that I didn't do this with intention, that it was an oversight or that it was a misunderstanding. Gosh, what a gift, and how much stronger we get because of that. Yeah. So I think that that's a beautiful way of working with other people, period. Right. Yeah. For women, what I've noticed working in bands is women really, because we're so analytical, emotionally analytical, we can really get into psychoanalyzing each other, in argument,
Yeah.
and it can be really hurtful to have bared your soul the way that you do when you're driving for days and days and days on end in a small vehicle and, spending all this time together. It's like you kind of know where the soft spots are in each other. So I think it's important to respect that and not go too far down that road, of psychoanalyzing each other. Let's just take the words or the action, and let's deal with that and not dive too far into, what happened when you were 13 that caused this problem, right?
Triggering the emotion, right?
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that happen too. So that's one thing that I try to check in myself, because I love psychoanalyzing people from a distance.
Yeah. This is good, Clem. No, I love this. And I was writing some things down as you were talking, because I do think this is good. And I do think these are very important things in like a lot of relationship, right? Because I think a lot of times people are fearful to be open and honest. And I think that you're right. That's where resentment comes in. And when you're working closely with somebody in a capacity like you guys for many, many years, that's a relationship. That's not just like, hey, I'm coming into the office. I've seen you a few times. No, you guys are like closely traveling together. You're like in each other's spaces a lot. And so I love this. And I think it's so powerful, that I really like I like both, but I really like the first part where you talk about the success part, because you're looking at that from a we perspective of that your success is my success. And it's not I'm competing with you now. It's, hey, you're being successful and I have now the opportunity to be in your space, And so I like that. But I also really love your outlook on all of it. I think that's what I think is so neat about you, is that you're like, I'm welcoming this feedback, even though it may be hard. It's hard to take feedback and criticism from people, right? It always is. And to be, your perspective is to be that they feel comfortable enough to say that to me. I love that perspective, because that is so hard to do.
It's really hard to do. And I certainly get triggered, right? And this is where my, 30 years of meditation and contemplative practice comes in, because, somebody says something that's difficult for me to hear, and I see the thing rise up in me, the defense, and sometimes it's valid, I just didn't mean it that way. You heard it wrong, and that's not what I said. And that's not what and you get that whole thing, but of coming up. But then, and this is funny because this happened to me recently with a review of the book. It was like the first, not happy review of my book. And, my writing is me, right? I mean, it's a big part of me. It's very connected to me, who I am. And I went down this little rabbit hole of the response, and I wrote this letter in my head and all of this stuff. And then I just started laughing at myself. Everybody has their own opinion. It doesn't reflect on me at all, and so there's just, they paid attention to the book. Great. That's enough.
Right. I love it. Well, it's funny that you say that, because I think I shared with you that I studied transcendental meditation. And so I believe in all of that. And so it's so funny, because earlier somebody upset me about something. It was so stupid. Somebody just said something to me. And you just said, I could feel that, that temperature rising, it was coming up. And I just said, you know what? I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to pause. I'm going to hold the thought, and I'm going to just retract, and I'm going to calm down and breathe. I'm just going to take it back, so that if I do feel the need later on to say something, it's coming from a different place. It's not coming from a reactive state, right? I've had time to process. I'm actually over it now, which is good, because I didn't say anything. I just let it go down. You know what I mean? And so sometimes you do, you have to tell yourself, and I do this all the time, because I don't know if you're like this, but I want to react. I immediately want to go into reaction mode. And so I just sometimes have to say, Jennifer, just take a deep breath, pause this, think about this for a little while. You can address this when you calm down, because you don't want to do something or say something that you don't mean, And so sometimes it's good to just do that. Take that breath,
Yeah, and that it really is the benefit when we talk about all the benefits of meditation. Sitting for 5 minutes a day, even just to sit, connect to your breath, and just go inside and just observe, be the observer for a moment for 5 minutes a day. I think the biggest benefit is we get a little distance from our reactions.
Yeah.
And that little distance really puts you gain a different perspective about your life. You don't feel like a ping pong ball, being, all of these things happening to you. You're able to kind of just witness and then respond in a more measured way. And that really does change our lives in such a profound way. It's it opens up so many avenues for us if we're able to just take a moment and just not get into these, these reactive
into the weeds
states
of it.
Yeah.
I like that you use the ping pong, because there have been times, when I was younger, when, I would say before I kind of went on my whole journey of, healing and self-discovery, I feel like we're still on it. Like you don't really arrive, you just keep doing it. Right. But that is probably the best way to put it, because when you're always in a reactive state to feedback or criticism or people coming, you feel like the victim and you're just ping ponging all the time, reacting, and when you get to a place where you, like you just said about your review, I mean, I had a review on my book, same thing. I remember getting it and thinking, did they really read my book? Because if they really read my book and understood my story, they wouldn't be writing this, right? Like they wouldn't write this, because it gets very personally connected. But I think when you start to do that, where you can actually just sit back, you can go, is it really even this important to be upset about it? Like, is it worth all this energy and, like, what's it even going to solve? Other than you being frustrated,
Yeah. And our nervous system is just like in this constant, like waiting for the next thing. There's a piece in the book about this weekend where I had shows in the Midwest. We tend to do like 3 shows in a weekend, and I flew out to the shows, and I just was in a bad mood. Like I got off the plane, I got the rental car. I just was not myself.
Not feeling it.
And I just felt myself almost justifying my bad mood by finding fault in everything that happened, and it lasted. And I could see at one point, I was choosing that, I was choosing that. And for whatever reason, I guess that weekend I needed to just be a grumpy guy. Right. And so I really examined that in that chapter in the book, because it was really funny to watch how, I let it snowball, and letting it snowball can really, it changes your whole, it messed up my whole weekend. I wasn't friendly as I usually am to other people. I more hid, I didn't want anybody. It was just this whole kind of thing that happened.
I'm feeling it. I've had those moments. I'm feeling it. I love your energy, and I love what you're doing. And so tell us a little bit about what you're doing with the spiritual counseling. So we can kind of get an idea what that is, but are you actually coaching like individual clients? Are you doing like group things? What are you doing?
Yeah, I've done a couple of nice group things, but mostly I work one-on-one with people, and I work in a modality called depth hypnosis, and another one called applied shamanism. And depth hypnosis was created by a teacher, Dr. Isa Gucciardi in Berkeley, California. Her foundation is called the Foundation of the Sacred Stream. And depth hypnosis is a marriage between Western psychological method, Buddhism, especially Tibetan Buddhism, and shamanic practice, which when I say shamanism, I know there's a lot of woo going on about shamanism, but it really is earth-based wisdom. And almost all of humanity has a tradition of earth-based wisdom. And a shaman is someone who looks at the natural world and translates its messages for the community. And shamans do this they access the altered state that allows them to bring those messages in through a variety of ways across cultures. Some use plant medicines, some use really kind of like difficult rituals, but many shamans use a drum to create the sound of the create the altered state. So a frame drum, a repetitive drum, is known to access those brain waves that put us in a meditative state. So a shamanic journey is really when we're quiet, we're listening to the drum to allow us to open up that field within us where our inner metaphors, our inner knowing can rise. And I like shamanic practice a lot because it's very grounding. Because say we have these parts of ourself. Mostly we have a part of ourself that has our best interest at heart. That's that deep knowing that we come to in that meditative state. And in shamanism, we put a face on that part. Maybe it's a bear or, a higher being or whatever, a tree, whatever it is. And these metaphors rise up from within us, and they're our own. And it's very empowering to discover this world within ourselves where we're getting information and getting this sense that we really do have our best interest at heart beneath our conscious critical mind that's trying to figure out. There's this other knowing. So, I work with people who have depth hypnosis has a peer-reviewed study that that shows its great benefit for people with trauma, PTSD, depression, anxiety. So I work with a lot of people with early childhood trauma, people who, and I also work with people who have it in order to prepare for or to integrate plant medicine ceremonies. A lot of people go into those ceremonies just thinking that they're going to, try to, like it's the new thing that they want to kind of explore, but they don't, they're not prepared for it. And they go in and have a very difficult experience. And, which happened to me actually many, many years ago, where I had a very almost pretty traumatic experience in a plant medicine ceremony. And it took me a year to figure out, what that all was about. Well, now I have a really beautiful tool to help people connect to their inner wisdom that they can connect with in the ceremony. And then afterwards, we can integrate all of the information that they received to really understand it through that inner wisdom that we've connected with. So it's a really beautiful, some beautiful modalities.
It's interesting. Yeah.
Energy, sound healing, those are all part of it as well. So
I love how you kind of got it all, like everything kind of pulled together. I love it. So it's interesting.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. I always get, I'm very, what's the word I'm looking for? Like this stuff, like I'm always interested in these different things that people are doing, these different modalities like you're talking about. Cause like some of these I have, obviously I know meditation. I'm familiar with that because I studied that, but like you're talking about the shaman stuff, I have no idea about that stuff. So I love learning about these different things that you guys are doing and how you bring them in. And I really love that you've been able to bring your gift of, your drumming into this world of what you're doing here and found that how you could just kind of round all that off. And I think that's the best. So I love it.
Yeah.
So what I want to ask you is if our audience, because this has been great, and thank you for sharing your wisdom on, the main topic that we were talking about. I know we talked about so many things here, and that's how this always goes, is that we have so many things we want to talk about. Totally great. But if our audience wants to get in touch with you and maybe they want to learn a little bit more about your book or what you're doing with your spiritual counseling, or maybe find your band, find out where you guys are at and all of that good stuff, where would you like us to send them?
Yeah. So the center of my world is at clemthegreat.com. And that has links to all of the music. It has links to my spiritual counseling website. It has the book is there, and you can purchase the book on Amazon as well. But you can get signed copies on my website too. So
awesome! I like that you have that one. I had to do the same thing with mine because I had podcast page, and then there was the book, and I finally I had to have just like my name, Jennifer. My last name's hard, but that's what it is, and everything is there. If you need to find it, you can find it there. So this is good, Clem. Right. I'll make sure we'll make sure when this gets out that we'll get the webpage in there so they know how to find you and get connected with you if they find they want to find out more about it. And I'm going to keep in touch with you for sure because I want to follow what you're doing and see.
Thank you.
I'm always, like I said, always looking to learn more stuff. So love what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And just speaking about, being a supporter of the female community, I really, really admire what you're doing, because the world does need people to celebrate other women and to bring them to the forefront. And in that, we all elevate. So thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, and of course, we do want to say to our audience, if you enjoy the show, please be sure you go check us out on Apple, give us a rating over there, head over to YouTube, hit that subscribe button so we can keep sharing all these amazing people, right? That's how it is. And of course, you guys take care of yourselves, be kind to one another. We will see you next time.